Commissioners meeting for January 28th, 2025. If you would please stand for our invocation and pledge allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support. Please grant us the patience, tolerance, and understanding that we need to effectively conduct this meeting and to better serve our constituents. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion and further nurture the connection that we have with our community. Continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for you and for our community. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Roll call for purposes of attendance. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Bassett. Here. Calton.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Getty. Here. Hatfield.
Here.
Smelker.
Here.
Tunison.
Here.
Jackson.
Here. Thank you. Reports from state and county officials. At this time, do we have any state or county officials that would like to give an update to the board?
I would. Thank you. Is that me making that noise? Yeah, you can come up. Hi, everybody. Good morning. For anybody in the room that doesn't know me, I'm Julie McFarland, prosecuting attorney for Berry County, and this is Chris Ellsworth. He's an assistant prosecutor here in Berry County. And the purpose for getting together today with Chris is because Chris, who has served this county for 18 years, since 2007, is leaving us on Friday to go to Kalamazoo County, and I'm sad to say that. We've had a good long talk as to his reasoning, and those are always personal reasons, but Chris, I'm hoping his next chapter, and I have no doubt, given his experience and his talents, his next chapter is going to be great, but I'm also very sad for Berry County. But I wanted to say a few things about Chris, because I think we're holed up over there in the other courthouse a lot, and we're going to court, filing paperwork, meeting with victims, going to meetings, whatever we're doing. We don't make it here as often as we probably would like, but I wanted, I talked to Dave a little bit, and we thought it would be nice to talk to you and tell you who Chris is, and then just say a few things about him so the county can remember the gem that they have. So Chris has been with the county 18 years. He's a senior trial attorney and has been for a very long time. In Michigan, misdemeanors are something with a maximum penalty of less than a year or less, and felonies are over a year. Well, it takes a while to build up to be able to conduct felonies in court, and Chris earned that right a very, very long time ago. And so Chris has been a senior attorney who's done everything from simple misdemeanors, civil infractions over time. Civil infraction would be like a speeding ticket, and then has graduated and thankfully for this county has done homicides. He's been my partner in a lot of homicide cases. His help and his dedication have been immeasurable, and you can't put a price on it. So he's also done a lot of criminal sexual conduct, robberies, probably one of his shining accomplishments, and I know that SWEAT is very mixed right now and has mixed emotions, but SWEAT is our Southwest Michigan enforcement team, our drug team. Chris has worked closely with SWEAT for many, many years, and so that's a big hole. When people get busted for drugs, they can have some of their property forfeited, and so there's some rules and regulations that surround it, but Chris is our forfeiture attorney. One of his other excellent and very amazing talents is he's done very well with our appeals. When we appeal something to the Court of Appeals, won many cases in the Court of Appeals, is very learned and scholarly in his ability to understand and extrapolate the law that applies to a situation. We miss that terribly. So we're a small enough county that the Michigan Attorney General handles our post-conviction appeals. That means that if somebody goes all the way to a trial and they lose, they get convicted of a crime, the Attorney General's office takes the post-conviction issues to the Court of Appeals. If it's not a post-conviction issue, if it's a sentencing issue, if it's we call it interlocutory. If an appeal issue comes up in the middle of a case, that's called an interlocutory appeal. There could be any number of appeals that would come up. Chris has really headed that up. So we appreciate that very much. It's very difficult to be an appellate attorney. It takes a lot of work. He is a strong advocate for victims. He's had to represent, I say represent, the prosecutor's office doesn't privately represent victims, but we represent the people of the state of Michigan. So when you have a crime against people, domestic violence, child abuse, an elderly or vulnerable victim being either assaulted or exploited or somebody has stolen from them, homicide, those are cases that Chris has handled excellently over the years, and those victims really need someone that's a strong person but that's also compassionate and spends a lot of time with them, and I can say that about all of us over there, but Chris we're going to miss that a lot. He's very well liked and very well respected by law enforcement, and one of the probably highest compliments that Chris gets from law enforcement is when they walk into his office and say, Chris, can you tell me about law such and such, and even if it's an obscure one, they tease me and tell me that Chris can tell them what the law is and what page it's on sometimes. And if you know our laws, we have a vast, endless library of laws, and that's just one of Chris's strong points that we love. He has been our champion on new laws, such as when medical marijuana became a law and when recreational marijuana became a law. Well, if anybody's ever tried to navigate those, I'm sure the law enforcement in the room will tell you that looking at them can mess with your head because they're just so confusing. Chris has not only sorted them out, but successfully argued cases in front of our local courts and the Court of Appeals regarding some of those laws that can be very confusing. Chris has really made a mark in this county. Really made a mark. And I'm not just saying that because he's leaving. I would tell you that any day in the 12 years that I have been the prosecutor here. Before I became the prosecutor, I was in private practice here and went up against Chris in court. So I want to tell you something quick about that. You can go up against a prosecutor and you can go up against a defense attorney, and the way they act and the way they handle themselves and the way they handle their case means a tremendous amount of importance for the case. It can mean the difference between a jury's perception of you if you're in a jury trial. It can mean my perception of the opposite attorney. It's a great thing to advocate and be assertive for your client or for your prosecutor's office. It's a completely different thing to advocate in a respectful, mutually respectful manner and not putting each other down. And Chris has been excellent at that. And he was like that with me when I was a defense attorney and he was a prosecutor. So never too big for their britches. You don't want somebody to get so big for their britches that they put you down because they want you to feel bad first before they'll negotiate with you. Exact opposite. And I will never forget that. Chris also, one of his jobs is to review and charge cases, and that is a very large responsibility for a prosecutor, and it's one that only we have. We are the only ones that can make those decisions on a local basis. We can get help from the Attorney General and the Prosecutors Association, but the decision lies with us, as does the decision on what to offer someone or whether to go to trial. And so Chris has had to sort out many tangled, and was in the middle of a couple of them just recently, many tangled and legally complicated matters over the years. Because when you charge someone, you have to make absolute sure that you feel you have the probable cause necessary to charge. And you try to look ahead and say, well, do I have enough to even take this all the way, or how do I feel about this? It's a very delicate balance between making sure we seek justice, which is our job, but also making sure we are very fair to the other side. And Chris has been quite a champion of that. So I just wanted you to meet him, and if you haven't already, and I wanted to say farewell to him publicly. We are going to miss him terribly. Dave Bannister is my chief assistant, and we got Chris in a room and shut the door, and we talked it out with him and tried to make him stay. But Chris has some very viable reasons for taking this job in Kalamazoo County, so at the end of the day, we are proud of him and we wish him the very best in Kalamazoo County.
Excellent, thank you.
And we are having an open house from 2 to 4:30 at our office for anybody that wants to say a goodbye to Chris, but we thought we would do it today too.
Chris, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate your 18 years of service to the county. I know that we go through all kinds of things. You guys go through all kinds of things that aren't often in the public eye. So a lot of things happen behind closed doors that you guys have to figure out. And we know with Julie's leadership and your leadership in that office that our reputation in this county has been outstanding. So we will certainly miss you with all of your contributions and your expertise in that field. So we wish you well in your future career down in Kalamazoo. Please don't be a stranger. You're welcome back anytime. If things don't work out, we will keep the door cracked, okay? So is that fair, Julie?
Absolutely. Ours will have a foot stopper in it, and it'll be wide open.
Other questions or comments from commissioners?
Well, I just, want to also extend my appreciation to you. I called Julie last week because I had 3 criminal attorneys that I greatly respect call me last week and said, do you know what you're losing? And I really didn't know what we were losing, but they quickly educated me, and they just wanted to make sure that we gave you a proper send-off, and I called Julie, and she was already on top of it, so I didn't need to do anything. But it tells me a lot when people that are sitting across the aisle from you call and want to commend you on the work that you have done and the relationships that they've been able to have with you. Although I got to thinking, maybe they just figure it's going to make their job easier now that you're gone.
It'll be a challenge.
You
that's
are
for sure.
highly respected, and we appreciate how you've represented Berry County.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julie. I really
Gotcha.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to miss my boss. I'm going to miss working for Berry County. I'm going to miss the law enforcement in Berry County. Everybody knows how to get a hold of me. Everybody's welcome to get a hold of me whenever they want. Thank you for giving me the privilege of working here for 18 years. It's been an honor, and I will miss everybody here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Julie. Additional reports for state and county officers.
By the way, what she said, yes. One of the most emotional trials I ever sat in on was the Curtis trial, and he handled that brilliantly, and he had a great outcome on that one. So, yeah, Chris, you're going to be missed master at the sheriff's office. So, yeah, he was our go-to guy. But just like she said, got a question on the law. If you didn't know it, you got a phone call back in a little bit, and he had it for you. So, appreciate that. I yield now. Thank you very much. All right, we introduce 2 new deputies here in about 1 minute. So I need both of your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you support the Constitution of the state of Michigan. And you faithfully. Wait a minute, who wrote this up? Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that you support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, and you faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Deputy Sheriff in the city of Hastings, County of Berry, and State of Michigan, according to the best of your ability. All right, it's that simple. What's really cool about this is Addie over here, her mom and dad both retired from Berry County Sheriff's Office, and they're both miss very much. And so now we got 2, hopefully filling some big shoes here. So we need signatures. dad used to rent from me years ago, and it's kind of amazing. I never expected her to be working for the clerk's office full-time and signing new deputies in, so.
Are we doing road patrol, or are we doing
Yeah, this is
corrections?
law enforcement, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Apologize for that. Take you. All set. We're all set. Thank you, and I like doing that in front of you guys, so you get to see the new recruits coming on in.
Absolutely.
So the way it works is, they got 4 months of training. Then we'll start them out with a training officer. We'll put them to another training officer, and then a third training officer. The 4th month, they go back to the original training officer, and we have to see that growth. And we're pretty confident we're going to see that with these two right here. And they're on probation for a year, and after that, we're ready to go. But thank you.
You said this was Macy and Ryan, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good memory.
It's nice to meet you guys. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Additional reports from state and county officials.
Good morning. Jeff Keesler from the Planning and Zoning Department. Just wanted to go over our year-end report, which I think you all have a copy. Overall, the numbers are very similar to years past, and especially last year. One thing that still remains is that housing still is an issue in the county, and affordability and also availability of housing. PCI, professional code inspections, they handle our permitting. They did 1,002 building permits this past year, and a total of 2,500 electrical, plumbing, and mechanical permits. The planning department generated $49,397, which is, again, very close to the number for last year as well. On the second page, we have kind of a breakdown of the different permits that we handled in 2024. And they kind of follow themes a little bit, but in the zoning permits tended to be highest in our growth areas in the county. Soil erosion, if you notice, were more higher in our lake and riverfront water areas of the county. Land divisions highest in sort of the rural and agricultural areas. And quite a few new address changes this year too. So, anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
So on land division, I'm trying to understand what this means. Let's say overall 74 over 120, what does that mean?
So the 74 would be requests, and then the 120 is new parcels created.
I see. And also, so I'm trying to, so what does that mean, address change?
Yeah, so we do new addresses and new roads for the county, and so we handle, if somebody buys a parcel or splits off a parcel and makes a house on that parcel, we have to issue them a new address. So it's just a way of tracking basically new homes and new structures in the county.
Okay, and then last, what is closeout?
Closeouts, that's our code enforcement, and unfortunately that's not really I don't handle the code enforcement, that's Chris Manel, but these would be issues that we addressed and then closed out those issues, so they were handled. Somebody had something in their yard that wasn't supposed to be there, we handled that issue and closed it out. They took care of that issue. Any other questions?
So you're saying basically 138 new addresses assigned in Berry County?
Correct.
In 2023?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like from looking at your previous numbers, 2022, 3,042, 23, 2781, and 24, 25, 28. So it's a little softer, trending downward a little bit in permits, but not by much. So
Correct.
Okay. And is that number of addresses close to the same as it's been running?
Yeah, and actually I brought the 2023 with me. Next year, I'll probably do a comparison in the total section. I'll probably do, this year's total and then compare it to last year. But I do have last year's numbers, and yeah, we had 100 new addresses and 3 commercial addresses. So it's a few more, but overall the numbers for 2023 were very similar to 2024. So what does that mean? That tells us that we're having measured growth. We don't see any zeros on here, and we don't see any really large numbers where populations are blowing up or 500 home developments are going in. So there's just continued measured growth in the county, I think, is what that says to me.
So when we see 1,002 building permits, that could also be for a garage or for an addition.
Correct.
Or something like that. So not necessarily new dwellings.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yep.
Good to see. Additional questions for Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, what's the minimal size for someone to build on? I know like Rutland at one time had 2.5 acres. Now they just moved that down to like 1 acre or maybe some in that range. What is our county stand?
So most of the county is 1 acre minimum. In the recreational lakes area, it depends if you have a sewer or a septic system, but you can go down to, I think it's 8,500 square feet, which would be about 1/3 of an acre. And if you think about some of our lakeshore lots, very small, we want a little bit bigger size if you're on septic, because we want to keep everybody healthy. And but yeah, you can, in some of those districts, you can go down to the recreational lakes is the primary one. You can go smaller, but 1 acre minimum is most of the county.
Awesome. Commissioner Schmalker.
The blank ones on here are the townships with their own zoning.
It's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Additional questions for Jeff? Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the update and the report. We'll look forward to working with you.
Absolutely.
And Jeff successfully made it through his first planning commission meeting last night. So.
There you go. In the howling wind.
In the howling wind, yes.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Additional reports from state and county officials? Hearing none, limited public comment at this time. Any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes. Our first public comment period is for items listed on the agenda. Hearing none, approval of the written agenda. At this time, any member of the board may ask an item to be removed from the consent agenda and placed under items for consideration. Hearing no such request, does any commissioner wish to change the agenda additionally? Hearing no such request, the agenda is approved as written. Various correspondence. Does any commissioner have correspondence they'd like to share with the board? Okay. Consent agenda. Commissioner Getty.
Deep breath here.
Yeah, deep breath, take a drink.
I move for the approval of approval of January 14th, 2025 Board of Commissioners meeting minutes. B, approval to publish and promote the Berry County Opioid Settlement Funds, RFP, with attachments prepared by the Opioid Settlement Fund Steering Committee and RFP Workgroup. C, approval of the reappointment to the Berry County Land Bank Authority of Cindy Vujea, Chelsey Foster, and Jeff Keesler to a 3-year term that begins on May 1st, 2025 and ends on April 30th, 2029. D, approval to remove former Berry County Treasurer Susan Vandekar from the Berry County Building Authority and appoint Kelly Shumway, Berry County Treasurer, to the Berry County Building Authority for the 3-year term that began 1/1/2023 and ends on 12/31/2025. E, approval of the attached revised Deputy Drain Commissioner job description and reclassification from grade level 9 to grade level 8 on the BCCEA pay scale. F, approval of the attached revised job description and position title for the drain maintenance technician, formerly drain maintenance worker, and reclassification to grade level 3 from grade level 2 on the BCCEA pay scale. G, approval to increase the drain maintenance technician position from .875 FTE to 1 FTE. H, approval to reappoint Sally Schuster-Schaff, Betsy Colgan, Deb Crosario, thank you, and Karen Heath to serve on the Berry County Commission on Aging Board for 3-year terms that begin on 1/1/2025 and will expire on 12/31/2027. I, approval to reappoint Craig Stolzenberg to serve on the Berry County Transit Board for a 3-year term that begin on 1/1/2025 and expires on 12/31/2027. J, approval to reappoint Joe Sansamino to the position representing ag interest on the Berry County Conservation Easement Board for a 3-year term that began on 1/1/2025 and ends on 12/31/2025. K, approval to reappoint Nicole Like and to appoint Michael Bremer to fill citizen-at-large positions on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 3-year terms that begin on January 1st, 2025 and ends on December 31st, 2027. L, approval to appoint Jamie Knight to serve on the Berry County Board of Road Commissioners for a 6-year term that began on 1/1/2025 and expires on 12/31/2030. And M, approval to reappoint Carla Neal and to appoint Ryan Reeder to serve on the Berry County Veterans Affairs Committee for a 4-year term that began on 1/1/2025 and expires on 12/31/2028.
Great job. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Getty, support by Hatfield for all items listed on the consent agenda. Discussion is not allowed and a roll call vote is required. All those in favor vote aye, opposed vote nay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Bassett? Aye. Calton?
Aye.
Campbell?
Aye.
Getty? Aye. Hatfield?
Aye.
Smelker?
Aye.
Tunison?
Aye.
Jackson?
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Presentations. Today we have Daniel Zollner, Executive Director, and Ben Savoy, Forester, to update us on the Spongy Moss Survey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody today? Thank you for having us here. This is actually my first time as the new executive director at the Berry Conservation District. My background is I started off with a bachelor's in natural resource management and conservation biology and ended up going all the way to the end with a PhD in ecology and concentrated my research mostly in forests and wetlands. And just prior to accepting this position, I had started a small farm business on our property that's located just up in the northwest corner of Calhoun County. So I can sort of consider myself from the Three Corners areas. And so I'm excited to be working with a phenomenal board and staff at the Conservation District, and as well as a passionate group of residents here in the county. My own family recreates here in Berry County quite often, so I was very excited to be offered the position last fall. And thank you for supporting our work, as well as your commitment to science-based management, and that is one of the reasons that we are actually here today. I also wanted to, before I hand the microphone over to our forester, Ben, I wanted to invite you all to our Faces of Conservation event, which will be on Friday, February 28th. It's a lovely event that we hold up in the ballroom of the Waldorf, and you can find those event tickets online at on our website, berrycd.org. And also let you know if you would like to visit with our recycling coordinator or our invasive species team. They will actually be at the Family Science Night at the Hastings Library on February 19th to interact with kids and residents. And we are also currently holding our seedling tree sale. So these are bare root seedlings, so relatively small, but they also make them very affordable for folks to, add add native species to their landscapes on small properties to very large properties, and that is available on our website also. And it's an online automated platform, and you can just pay for those trees with your credit card and then pick them up at Charlton Park from us at the end of April. So without
How long does the sale go for?
It started now and will end April 16th.
April
is the last
16th,
day that we'll
okay.
be taking orders. And then pickup is scheduled for April 24th or 25th and 26th, Friday and Saturday.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And I will introduce Ben, and we also have Dr. Greg Dwyer here with us today from the University of Chicago. He owns a small cabin on a local lake here, but also has a passion for spongy moth viral diseases. So a great match here.
All right, thank you very much. So today we'll be talking about Barry County's favorite little critter, the spongy moth. It's a invasive species, so something that is not native to Michigan and has caused quite some harm to the forests in our great county. So it has been introduced back in the 1800s. It's kind of a failed silkworm experiment, and has spread from its original location to across the United States. We have done a study based on your request to figure out what the damages are going to be to Barry County for the coming years, and you have the presentation that's attached to your agendas today. If we could pull that up, I've got a few numbers on there that would be very helpful for presenting to the board.
They're working on it, Ben.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes. So the host trees for spongy moth, they vary, but they prefer oak trees, and Barry County has no shortage of oak trees. They appear in May, early May, and feed throughout June and July, which is what most people notice. They eat all the leaves on the trees and leave their waste everywhere. The adults themselves don't feed, but they lay a lot of eggs, which then perpetuate the problem into the next year. Their normal cycle is a 5 to 7 year outbreak cycle, so they'll have very low populations for a few years, and it'll build up slowly and slowly up until a huge amount of them at once, and then they quite frequently die off very quickly from there. The pupa is the basically little cartridge that they form so that they can change from the caterpillar into adults. Most treatments are not effective at that stage. So when we try and do any treatments for spongy moth, we're mostly targeting the caterpillars because those are what's feeding on the trees and what we can actively work against. The egg masses appear in the fall, and that's why we were surveying for these in the late fall. We were looking for these egg masses, which are orange, hairy, and quite firm to the touch when you find them in the fall. When we find them, we can estimate that each one is about 500 new caterpillars, and the female moths only lay one egg sac each. So if we can count each egg sac, we know roughly what the population is going to be for the next year. Let's see. So things that we can do to prepare for a spongy moth infestation: when we find the egg masses, we can destroy them. They can be scraped off into soap water, and that kills all the eggs. You can band host trees with burlap or other sticky substances like duct tape, and that will capture the larva, which you can destroy at your own leisure. And what we're mainly trying to see with this study is whether an aerial treatment is necessary, which is a basically a bulk application of a insecticide to the leaves in the spring to affect the caterpillars as they're feeding. So the natural control mechanism, which Greg will be talking about in more detail, is a virus that gets basically spreads throughout the population and kills them all off very rapidly. So we're trying to see if the virus is present and if the egg masses are in enough quantity that a spraying would be necessary to help control them additionally. So we are nearing, from our studies, we're nearing an end of this outbreak cycle. So it's at a very high population point, but we expect a crash in that population very rapidly. So is treatment necessary from there? It's a lot of managing the risks of whether the damage from that comes up or if we want to try and cut that off. There was a lot of cost involved with the spraying, the aerial spraying, especially over a large area, so we need to kind of consider that as well. An example from local communities on how this was handled is from Ada Township. They partnered with Hamilton Helicopters, which is an aerial spraying company in Hamilton, in Allegan County. And they also had surveys done by an aquatic consulting service, which covered quite a large area of Ada Township. They treated roughly 3,000 acres, and that had an approximate cost of $200,000, so quite a substantial cost for the township to take. So what we did is we did a survey over 5 different townships in Berry County. That was Orangeville, Hope, Yankee Springs, Irving, and Rutland Charter Township. We sent a survey form out to 207 sites, and we got a response from 43 of them, and out of those 43, we were able to survey 31 of those sites, which was a little over 3,000 acres that we were able to actually go out and count the egg masses that were on each individual tree in these sample plots that we took. And by we, I mean myself and our seasonal staff. The 40th acre plots that we took, these are based off of a method that that Penn State uses for their sponging moth surveying. It's a 40th acre plot, which is centered around an oak tree in a site, and we did 4 of those plots per site, so to try and get a representative sample across the forested landscape. So these samples were for finding the exact amount of egg masses per acre. Basically, we would count as many egg masses as we could find in these 40th acre plots, all the way up and down the tree, in the leaf litter, on the forest floor, on shrubs, on dead wood, anything that we could find. From that, we could multiply the egg masses we found by 40, since we're trying to find egg masses per acre, and that would tell us the exact population, more or less. We also counted whether the egg sacs were old and not viable, so they wouldn't be hatching this coming spring, to the healthy egg sacs that would be hatching this spring, so that we can see whether the population is declining by seeing more old egg sacs, old and dead egg sacs, versus the new egg sacs. The map that is up there shows a township map of Berry County, and on the right is where we actually did these surveys. So we got a I think, a representative sample of Berry County. We get basically all the forested land that is in Berry County, just in different pockets where the townships were most heavily infested. The sites that we hit were at least 40 acres in size and owned by private individuals. What we found was that 84% of the egg masses were non-viable. So we're seeing a very sharp decline in the number of egg sacs that are going to be hatching this coming spring. And we did find quite a high average of egg sacs, which accurately represents the complaints we were getting from citizens in Berry County, that there was quite a lot of the caterpillars that were out, so many of them made it to adulthood and laid eggs. The average of 1,168 egg masses per acre is shifted by a few sites that were very, very high. Most of them were much lower than that. The University of Chicago data also shows us that there are really high rates of infection of the viral disease that kills off the spongy moth caterpillars. And that will be talked to more in depth by Greg. The graph that we have here also shows the heightened average because of these individual sites that were extremely high. You can see about half of the graph is well below 1,000 egg masses per acre, and then there was a few that had multiple thousand per acre. The map after that shows the hotspot areas where there was kind of scattered across the county individual pockets of high density spongy moth egg masses. Those are the dots in red. When we see areas like that, that is where we're most likely to see any damage or death of our native trees, and that's where, if we were going to do anything about treatment for spongy moth, where we would want to focus our efforts. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Dwyer to talk about their research.
Yeah, you can take a second. Hi, thanks for letting me speak today. Like Danielle said, I own 8.5 acres with my wife on Little Cedar Lake, and a big chunk of that is forested, and the spongy moths have been attacking madly, and so I sort of have some skin in the game. This is this question of what should be done about the spongy moths. So if we could go a slide forward maybe, or maybe even two. We're about here. You can see that. Yep. It'll show you a spongy moth. And so there's a healthy, happy, well, as far as we can tell, healthy, happy spongy moth. And I want to contrast that with the next slide, which is a spongy moth that's been killed by the virus, which is this weird gray-looking smear there. If you look carefully, you can see a big black blob, and that's the insect's head. But otherwise, the virus has just made it melt, which is very handy for us because the virus is basically everywhere and it kills the spongy moths. And in fact, it has to kill in order to make its living. And so that gray smear, let's go to the next slide, is composed of a slurry of these weird particles. That one there, that's great. This thing. And if another insect comes along and feeds on that leaf with some dead spongy moth in it, that particle is going to uncoil inside the spongy moth. It sheds its big coat, and the virus comes out and infects the insect. But the great thing about these particles, this is a little weird. If you're a virologist, these things are gigantic. Like they're 5 or 10 microns across, which is not visible to the naked eye, but most viruses are very small, and most viruses don't last. These things on a leaf can last about 3 or 4 days. In the leaf litter, they can last 30 to 40 years. So the virus is just hanging out there, waiting for spongy moths to come along. The great thing about the virus is that it spreads most rapidly when there are lots and lots and lots of spongy moths. It'll spread like mad. And I'm one of the people who's demonstrated that. I've been working on these kinds of diseases for, God help me, 40 years. And I'm one of the people who's demonstrated that when there are more insects, the diseases spread faster. So I saw all these spongy moths out here. My wife and I do a lot of hiking where I'm like, oh my gosh, the insect is back. We should be studying this. And so over the past 2 summers, we went out and collected insects. And I'm going to show you a really boring slide, not just yet, but it's going to get really dull. It's got a lot of scientific details on it, and that's because I'm also going to show you some numbers. And the numbers are going to be a little numbing, to be honest, but they really, really matter. When Ben's throwing around numbers like $200,000, you're going to care about the numbers I'm going to show you a lot. And it might be they're a little optimistic, and Ben and Danielle and I are going to argue and wrestle and try to figure out just if they're too optimistic or not. But the numbers matter. Okay, so let's go to this table where it says Dwyer Lab baculovirus assay. So we'll scroll up a little bit in the slides there. This thing here. There we go. So my student and I and my wife, we went out and collected 50 larvae, the caterpillars, each week. The disease only affects the caterpillars. They only give it to each other. It's specific to this insect. If you've been walking in the forest over the last couple of summers, you've probably inhaled enough virus to kill caterpillars, but it has no effect on people whatsoever, which is, of course, extremely important. Right? It's not like a virus infects humans. We bring the insects into the lab. This is the weird and boring part. We have to do that because we want to know how many of them have it outdoors. How did they catch it outdoors? We don't want the virus to be spreading in the lab. And so we feed them this weird glop that's agar. It's like plant-based jello, and it's got Leachum in it to see whether they have the disease or not. If they die, you can see the virus under a microscope. We autopsy them. And then here's where the numbers come in. We calculate the fraction surviving each week. Okay, I can give you a really simple example that's not accurate, but just simple. Suppose 50% of them survive the first week. And then of the survivors, 50% survive the second week. That's 1/2 times 1/2. 1/4 have made it 2 weeks. They've got to make it about 10 weeks. 50%, the virus is doing bad if it's only killing 50%. Lots of times it kills like 80%. So it kills a very, very high fraction. So what we do is we calculate, this is the boring part, but it gets to the really, really important numbers. We calculate each week what fraction died of the disease. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, all the way to week 10. And then that tells us what fraction, 1 minus that product of the weekly fraction surviving, gets us to the fraction that died of the disease. Okay, and we're going to go to the next slide. It's going to be some numbing numbers. Oh, no, we're going to do a map. I'll show you how we did this. We'll go to that slide. Okay. Collecting insects like this is hard. We rented lab space at KBS. The insects were stacked up to the ceiling. Ben was looking at 40 sites. We can only look at 5. At each site, we had 5 little sample points, and you can see them there. I don't know how easy it is to see the little letters. KEF is Kellogg Experimental Forest. PCC is Pierce Cedar Creek. These are all sites around Doubtman. There's 3 sites in Yankee Springs game area. And since we couldn't cover the whole area, what we did is we had a site that was very far away, Kellogg Experimental Forest. We had a site that's a little closer. And then we had some sites clustered together. Now for the boring numbing numbers. Next slide. We'll scroll forward a little bit. It looks like this one here. This is the fraction dying of the virus. And the little abbreviations at the top are the different sites. So, and then the replicates are like when you're lifting weights, each of our little sample points. So at the first site we had 0.9999, and the second site was 0.9999, and then 0.99 blah 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 blah. Very, very high fractions dying of the virus. The next slide summarizes a little bit. It's still a little boring, but these numbers really, really matter, right? Almost all of the insects died. Now, they don't, like, we rear the insects in the lab. It's a little bit warmer than it is in the field. Makes me a hair nervous. And this is where we will argue back and forth to try to figure out just exactly how the numbers play out. I think the next slide is just my contact. Yeah, this is my, okay. So here's our plan. Is that insects will hatch from the egg sacs that Ben counted. Insects will hatch from those, and some of them they'll have the virus on the egg, and they chew their way out and they get infected. So there's some fraction coming out of the eggs infected. But the virus has to make it through the winter, and that's not so easy. So it's not going to be 99.9%. It's maybe 50% or 60%. Ben's going to hand some egg masses off to my lab. I have funding for, you can see at the bottom there, I have funding from the National Science Foundation. They want me to do this kind of thing. It's very much in line with my research. This is a really interesting problem. We're probably going to publish a paper about it at the end. I will calculate, this is another really important number, the fraction of the insects hatching out infected. And then there'll be, maybe it's 50%, and that means there's some fraction of the insects hanging out in the forest still. I've got a computer model that will let me take that number, stick into the computer model, predict how many of the insects will be around at the end of the season when they're really big and they start to chew in the leaves. And then we should be able to say how much risk of defoliation there is and whether it's worth spraying or not. I'm kind of at 0.9999. I'm kind of at no personally, but we'll keep discussing it and working on it. And questions about any of that?
It's a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And when we started this journey last year with the complaints from our constituents, we didn't realize that this was going to be such an in-depth process. But I appreciate people like you who are willing to go out there and capture bugs, research, tear them apart, dissect them. It's an interesting life.
I really enjoy it, and federal funding has been crucial. So hopefully the federal funding will keep up.
Well, it's nice to know that you have a home in Berry County in this area, that you have a vested interest in it. So that makes it a little bit easier when you know what you're working for here. So we appreciate that. So thank you.
I love it here. I really do.
Yes.
Just to kind of encapsulate, there's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
But to encapsulate it in a useful way for this year, when do you make the assessment of whether we need to spray this year?
March. The question is by what day in March? And I'm thinking about March 25, March 26. That's my best guess, because the insects aren't quite ready to hatch. So it might be early March. I don't know how that works out with schedules in terms of contracts and so forth. But it's possible we could push it to mid-March. I've been sitting worrying about this for the last few days, right? Because, of course, this is an issue.
So if it's at 0.99999, that's not worth it, but if it's 0.9998, I mean, what is the threshold?
We have statistical models that will answer that question. Okay? So my guess is, given that these numbers that Ben cited, they are pretty high, but they're nothing like they were last year. Right? And that's important because I don't think it needs to be 0.99. I actually think it's about 0.8 would probably do us. Okay? But that's a number I haven't calculated yet because we've only been doing this for a few weeks. But that number is very much in my mind, if that's at all reassuring.
So, Mr. Chair, if it's determined in March we need to spray, I mean, how long this whole machinery of getting approved funding and actually getting a company to spray, I mean, can we respond to that in a timely manner?
We probably have to work on that sooner than March. So, number one, I don't know, when we talk about $200,000 for spraying, that's not sitting around in the county budget to do that type of stuff. Number two, I think there'd be some viable questions that need to be answered about pollinators and butterflies and how it interacts with other species, because that's a big negative for doing something like this, especially when, based on some of the articles we've read and some of the information that's been presented to us, says that we're really on the downside of the epidemic right now, where it's sliding off. So numbers were halved over what they were and halved again last year. So if we continue that, you're saying that if they need to live 10 weeks, and right now, to get to that point where they can reproduce, that a lot of them aren't going to make it with the virus. I think that's what you're telling me.
Yes. Historically, that's how it's been. You start going down, they keep going down. It's not, you never get up high, boink. you don't get that. It just keeps going down historically.
Great. Yeah, on the next slide also covers a lot of these additional questions as well. Since the population does appear to be declining and that the infection rates seem to be very high, our recommendations were that if spraying is something to be desired and something that you need to work on quickly to do it in a timely fashion, that focusing on these high population areas like the areas in Delton and Hope and Berry Township, those would be where to do the spraying in smaller amounts, so that's not a huge project that costs millions of dollars or anything like that. The spraying, the typical insecticide that's used is a bacterial agent that is called BTK, and that is sprayed on the leaves in early spring so that when the caterpillars are feeding on it, they ingest it and die. That does have some overlap with some other species that are hatching early in the spring, most notably monarch caterpillars. So they're not usually in the same area where they're feeding, where we have oak trees and milkweed. They're typically not the same area. But it is a risk that should be accounted for. Yeah, so from there, do you have any questions and comments for us on our study or what the Conservation District can do to help?
And this is just my opinion, great information, so I really appreciate your presentation and thorough research. But it seems like if we're on the downshift of this, then maybe it's more important to monitor this and see when it starts on the upcycle if we're going to consider spraying, so we can minimize this versus when we're doing this right now.
Yeah,
I agree. That's just my thought, but I don't know what your input is on that.
My plan is to go out and sample no matter what and calculate the fraction. We'll make some kind of projection of what we expect to see, but then I'm going to go out and look to see if that's what we get. And so that'll be a kind of monitoring to see if they all die as I expect.
Yeah, I know it's not popular when your neighborhood is typically burdened or overrun by them.
Right.
But if we're seeing this continue to decline, I mean, it's hopeful versus spending $200,000 and some of the risks that we have to mitigate to do that. Individual property owners, there's just a lot of stuff to consider in there. But
I'm at no for what it's worth.
Okay. Questions from commissioners?
No, that was one of my questions.
I got one. How small an area can they spray?
That is a very good question. I would have to ask the individual contractors. I know that Hamilton Helicopters is a very busy company, so they typically have on the order of 100 acres or greater for individual clients. For larger, like municipalities, they'd probably want even more.
I got one comment. So, as property owners, you spray here. If the property over here didn't want the spray, right?
Right.
Is that going to fall out onto their property and then they might come after somebody?
It is very difficult to gather all the permissions for spraying over a large area because there's overlap, like you said, where you have the drifting of this chemical onto neighboring properties that maybe didn't want it.
Right.
When you're doing more of a broadcast.
That's a whole other problem.
We had similar concerns when they did the triple E spraying a few years back with mosquitoes, because this area is known to harbor some of these swamps that happen to be high in this particular virus with the mosquitoes. But that was a big concern a few years ago. Now, we didn't hear much about it this year, so hopefully that's on the downside as well. But that's all really good information. I appreciate this report and the details on it. I appreciate you coming here from Chicago and sharing some of that insight with us, and certainly your work here locally for us. Nice to meet you as well, Danielle, as far as getting started here.
And I was going to say, as far as something that could be monitored annually, this is definitely right up the Conservation District's alley. And having been as a forester on staff, it's something that we can continue to do and report back on over time.
Okay. Commissioner Hatfield?
We should also thank Danielle. She's agreed to serve as the chair of the Solid Waste Oversight Committee, now Materials Management Committee. So we're
Jumping right in, huh?
jumping right in.
You don't get to know something by standing back. And also the other thing that we can do is if individual property owners would like to know what they can do on their own property, there are definitely plenty of different spray options that are very effective on spongy moth that do not need commercial pesticide applicator licensing in order to use, and that can be done, pretty decently and stay on folks' properties. So that'll be something that we've done in the past and will continue to do, is educate the residents about what they can do on their own private property.
That might be very beneficial, because when you said March 25th as the spray date, that kind of took me by surprise.
No, that's decision date.
Decision date, okay.
Decision date. That's the earliest I could give you a number. I mean, I'm still at no, and I expect to continue to be at no, but March 25th would be, here's my final number.
Okay.
Not spray date. Spray date would be
early May, probably like the first 2 weeks of May.
Okay, because maybe working with our local media and some of this great information you guys have produced, we can start putting some articles out there about spongy moths, times are coming, here's how to prevent the infestation in your property.
We would love to help with that.
Lab, some chemical treatments, some suggestions like that maybe people can take on their own, because usually we hear about it after they're gooing up everybody's cars and houses and eating trees and stuff. But if we can be proactive with it and get that information out there, working with the media, that might be a real bonus. So
Great. Sounds great.
So awesome. Thank you once again for your time this morning. Very beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Who did we borrow this from?
It was nice meeting everyone.
Oh, we did that. Okay.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back to continue with the rest of our agenda. Commissioner Bassett, Commissioner Getty. Okay, the board will come back in session. Public hearings, we have none. Today, items for consideration, Commissioner Smoker.
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of transfers and disbursements, approval of claims in the amount of $92,689.44.
Is there support? Support. Motion by Smoker, support by Hatfield for approval of claims in the amount of $92,689.44. Discussion. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Colton.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Getty. Aye. Hatfield.
Aye.
Smelker.
Aye.
Tunison.
Aye.
Bassett. Aye. Jackson.
Aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chair, I move for the adoption of resolution number 25-05 for fiscal year 2026, resolution of intent to apply for state formula operating assistance under Act 51 of the Public Acts of 1951 as amended, and to name Transportation Director Mary Bassett as the official representative for all public transportation matters, who is authorized to provide such information as deemed necessary by the State Transportation Commission or Department for its administration of Act 51, and to sign and execute all agreements and documents.
Is there support? Support. Motion by Smelker, support by Tunison for adoption of Resolution 25-05, fiscal year 2026, resolution of intent to apply for state formula operating assistance under Act 51 of Public Acts of 1951 as amended, and to name Transportation Director Mary Bassett as the official representative for all transportation matters, who is authorized to provide such information as deemed necessary by the State Transportation Commission or Department for its administration of Act 51, and to sign and execute all agreements and documents. Additional discussion. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Campbell.
Aye.
Getty. Aye. Hatfield.
Aye.
Smelker.
Aye.
Tunison.
Aye.
Bassett. Aye. Colton.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of the attached letter authorizing Berry County Treasurer Kelly Shumway as the account owner signer on investment and bank accounts for the County of Berry effective January 1, 2025, and to authorize the chairperson to sign it.
Support, Campbell.
Motion by Smelker, support by Campbell for approval of the attached letter authorizing Berry County Treasurer Kelly Shumway as the account owner signer on investment and bank accounts for Berry County effective January 1st, 2025, and to authorize the chairperson to sign it. Discussion?
Question, is it usual to have just one person on those accounts?
Not in my experience, but that's, you have the clerk already.
So Kelly requested this, and the banks were reaching out to her for minutes from the board authorizing them to be on the account. She also would have the ability to put other people on the account, but this would allow her to change the name that's currently on there from Sylvie in the front to Alicia. So they wanted some authorization from the board that she could be on these accounts.
Okay. I mean, I guess I would say, I feel it's very unusual to only have one person authorized. I think there ought to be at least two, if not a third. I'm also not sure, I mean, we only have to authorize one person to sign, but there ought to be others that are eligible to sign. It's the old what happens if you get hit by a bus situation. Yeah.
She does intend to put at least one of her staff members in.
Typically, in my past experience, you have like the board chair. Here, I know the clerk and the treasurer do a lot of the signatures and things. It's a little different on the form of government, but if you have others you would like to authorize, it's in your purview.
Well, I guess I'm a little surprised that it's just a staff member in the office as opposed to another county official that would be the second person on the account.
Could we have the chair talk to Kelly and get other people on there?
Yeah, that'd be something that Eric and I can discuss and see what the needs are.
At the same time, if you want to authorize the chair or the clerk and or the clerk, we can do that and we can have them add it. It's your call.
We don't want too many people on the account, but by the same token, there are people who need to be on the account. So far, I haven't had to sign any checks or do anything, so I don't know that I need to be on it, but, you know.
I think it would be nice to have at least one other elected official.
Yeah, I think it's fine if she wants to put somebody in the office as also an authorized signer just from a day-to-day activity, but I think there ought to be another officer, either the clerk or the administrator authorized on there in case something happens to Kelly.
Safety protocol?
Yes.
Can we add a name to this motion?
Yeah. I would propose that we amend this motion to also authorize the clerk as an authorized signer and then ask that aside from that authorization, ask Kelly to indicate to us who else she would like to see named.
And am I right in assuming that Kelly can do that without board approval then, once she's authorized?
The treasurer is the owner of the accounts here.
Okay.
So I would think the bank would want something official, but.
Okay. Are you, Commissioner Smelker, Commissioner Campbell, you seconded the motion, are you okay with adding Sarah Vandenberg to the motion?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion will read approval of the attached letter authorizing Berry County Treasurer Kelly Shumway and Clerk Sarah Vandenberg as the account owner signer on the investment and bank accounts for the County of Berry effective January 1st, 2025, and to authorize the chairperson to sign it. Additional discussion? Question?
Okay. And I would think Kelly, with her banking background, would certainly understand the wisdom of and propriety of doing that. It's no statement of lack of confidence or anything in her. It's just what is fiscally appropriate.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes.
Getty? Aye. Hatfield?
Aye.
Smelker?
Aye.
Tunison?
Aye.
Bassett? Aye. Carlton?
Aye.
Campbell?
Aye.
Jackson?
Aye. The motion is approved. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have none. County Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank the commissioners and then the Sheriff's Department staff who went on the Branch County jail tour. I think it was a very informative trip. Hopefully you all thought so as well. We have a reminder. I sent an email to all of you. Lieutenant Nevins is trying to set up a tour of our jail so you can see the contrast. And even for those of you who didn't make the trip, after the cow next week, we'll head over to the jail and do a tour of our jail. I think the sheriff wants that just so you guys can see how bad it is. And
about what time you talking about, 11 maybe?
probably, yeah, just as, depending on the agenda, but as soon as we get out of here.
All right, I'll let them know. Thank you.
I emailed Pete. We're on the same page there. So I think that just sets us up for further discussions on the jail issue as we move forward this year. Other thing is Commissioner Hatfield, Commissioner Tunison, and I, along with a host of other characters, have spent 2 days interviewing contractors on the COA building project. I think it was a very good exercise. We learned some things. We've saved some money. We've spent some money. But we saved more than we spent, though. And the hope is the COA board will be looking at it today, and you'll have it on the cow next week for your consideration and approval. They're really hoping to break ground as soon as the weather will allow this spring. So I don't know, Dave and Bob have anything they'll add later, but I learned some things through it, and it was good to get it's a different region for me, so different host of characters and the contractors and such. So, but I like the process, and it's something I think we'll consider for future projects. So, besides that, a lot going on at the county.
Yeah. Okay, chairperson support, I am all set. Vice chairperson support?
Well, as Eric said, that was a very interesting session. I was only able to attend one of the 2 days, but I think that clearly it revealed some unaddressed issues in the bid packets and the specifications. Fortunately, we're talking about relatively small amounts of money in comparison to the total, so it wasn't a $1 million oops. We're talking about 1,000 here, 1,000 there, but it was a great experience, and I think allowed us to feel comfortable with the bidders that where I think that we're set to approve. Bob is a very key, has some real expertise that I think was very helpful in those discussions. I'm sure he'll have a little more to say on it. Other than that, we had the first of our first planning commission meeting since Jeff took over, and had some good discussion with him about processes and procedures going forward. So, good meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Tunison.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that, and I enjoyed sitting there next to you too, okay? I mean, we both had a lot of, I think, good questions. Everybody that was in that room was there for one reason, for the betterment of the whole, of making this project really be successful, being financially responsible. We would literally ask the question to the contractor, what do you feel confident in, not only that your number that you bid, but what can we do, you could do better to make this, and did you see anything that possibly you could do that might save some money here? And the painter on it, get rid of the wallpaper, it might save you up to $10,000. Okay, so that was a question that just came up because we were there, and we're all just brainstorming and asking questions, and things like that would come up. Or a different level of the finish of the drywall. If you only want to go here, then this is the job you're going to get. So, I mean, there was just a lot of questions that we all asked, and I think we came to a really good conclusion in the end of all the contractors that we picked. And we haven't approved them, obviously. But I feel very confident in every one of those guys that interviewed. And not everybody did, because like for blinds or something smaller projects, but all the bigger numbered projects, they came there and we got to meet them. And we got to ask them questions about the process, about, what do you need the next guy to do before you get there, stuff like that, so you're not on top of each other. And Frederick, I want to commend those guys. They're down-to-earth people. They're very professional, and I have a lot of respect for Ryan and Greg, the leaders there of Frederick, and they're looking out for our best interest as they call the owners, but the COA and Don't Apple Manor, they were so 100% looking out for their best interest on this whole project. So I was very impressed with it. I'm glad I got to do it.
Fantastic, thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Okay, yeah, very exciting times for the COA. I've always felt that that's a project that really needed to be done. I'm so glad that is getting done, and we're close to breaking grounds on it, so appreciate all the efforts, especially Bob with his background in building. My duties this week, it looks like I'm going to go to Thornapple and DHS tomorrow, and then at our last health department, I'm honored to say that we put in a new chairwoman, and it will be Catherine Getty, who I'm very proud to say will do an excellent job. That's all I have.
Commissioner Smoker.
Had a 911 meeting yesterday, and what they call the Nashville Tower, I think it's 425 feet, is up, and I just got a thumbs up from Dar, so it must be working.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Commissioner Getty.
We had a parks meeting last week, and Dan Patton is really moving forward with some more grant applications. I think he's got a really good staff, and we have some good consultants in place to I think have some strong applications for both the DNR and some other smaller grants. Yankee Springs Township held their joint meeting last week with their township board, their ZBA, and their planning commission all meet and share their annual report. And it's, if you want to share something with your townships in your district, it's a great practice to get those three boards together face to face, where they meet their planning commissioners and their ZBA members. The public is obviously there because it's a public meeting, but it's a great practice to be able to share those year-end reports and then what their new year plan is, their work plan. So reach out to Yankee Springs Township, with their supervisor there. Rob Heathis is just fantastic about leading that group. And then I have the Village of Middleville tonight.
Commissioner Dalton. Commissioner Bassett.
Well, I had the opportunity to attend the Don Kellogg School Board meeting last week, and they did vote to put a $42 million millage on the ballot in May. So just to make you all aware, and it's one of those that is not going to affect anybody's taxes, right? They're going to refinance and push forward, and so they have a very exciting roster of what they are planning to achieve with that, and zero additional taxes that will come to the voters. So it'll be interesting to see how it's received in the community, but they've really touched so many areas that I think as they turn to the public, it's got something in there for everyone. And so it's exciting to see what will happen with that. They're encouraged by the community support they've had so far. So we'll see about that. The other is to report I am one step closer to retirement, which means a lot for this board because I will have a lot more time available to me, but I'd say within a month I'll be able to devote myself fully here. So exciting times.
So you're saying $42 million, they just built the new middle school, so this is not an additional tax? This is a refinance or?
Yeah, basically, that's it. They didn't rebuild the middle school. They rebuilt the administration building in the front, right across from the library. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, they rebuilt that in the last. But this has all kinds of things. I mean, a long list. We can imagine what you can do with that much money. But it's really upgrading all the facilities. It's moving the press box and rebuilding the old stands. It's they're going to combine some different things in the middle school. They're going to move fourth grade up and rebuild the interior of the middle school, upgrade that because that's an old building. And so that will allow them to segregate like 4th and 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade, because there was a discomfort when they wanted to move 4th grade up previously. They didn't want the 4th graders mingling with the 8th graders, and so this will give them an opportunity to do that. So it just seems like it's touching a lot of aspects. High school, a lot of revamping of the high school.
Okay.
So, and also building some aquatic research areas on the lake, taking advantage of the lake front, and so they'll create some classroom opportunities there, building a greenhouse, building because now they've just started FFA, they're going to build a barn for the FFA. I mean, it's really a lot for CTE. You know, they just got the $150,000 grant for the manufacturing CTE course. Well, now they're going to get a lot to support that. So like I said, I think that it's going to touch people in such a way that, and since it's zero impact on your taxes, I think it has a good chance of passing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Limited public comment at this time. Any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes for anything on your mind.
Marcia thinks she's retiring. Yeah, okay. It's a part-time job here with full-time hours. I just want to let you guys all know. Anyways, Addie, apologize for a little outbreak about that with the oath. That's on me. Next time we'll make sure you get the proper stuff in there, right? So that's all I want to do is just, I said it publicly, so I'm going to apologize to her publicly. So we'll get that fixed. Thank you, and you guys have a good day.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Hearing none. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Bassett, anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to say how fortunate we are that we have these resources in this community for the spongy moth problem, right? I mean, we've got somebody living in the community from Chicago who has access to NSF funding, right? I mean, well, I'm married to an arborist, right? And so, I mean, all this, you know how passionate the community is about this problem, and look at the resources that we have to look and do research on it and have facts to be able to back whatever decision we make. I just think it's really, really wonderful to have these resources right here.
Never knew spongy moths could be that interesting, but here we are.
There you go, Dave.
Good information. Commissioner Colton? Commissioner Gedd?
Just to follow up, our $15,000 investment in the survey and what they've been able to do with it, I was really impressed with the report that they were able to come out with, you know, with just a $15,000 investment, staff resources that they put towards it. Pretty incredible.
Capturing spongy moths in a controlled environment, holding on to them for weeks, checking the death rate, the virus. We have to pay for it.
And he really thinks it's interesting.
Yeah, he does. He does.
I give him credit.
Commissioner Smoker.
I just want to thank them for what they've done, and I think it's going to be excellent if we put something out there in the media on what you can do with your small properties to take care of the problem.
Commissioner Tunison.
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Campbell. I'm good. And Commissioner Hedgefield. Thank you all for coming. Hope you can all attend the jail tour, the beautiful Berry County Jail, after our meeting next week. And I believe, I don't think we've seen anything for next week, but in talking with Vice, who was with us at the Branch County Jail, they've got a proposal for, what do we call it, a jail survey, where they go for a feasibility study, where they'll go in and they'll look at the condition and everything and see if parts of the jail are salvageable, what we can use, what we need. Get a bunch of input on that, and so we'll have a discussion on that next week, likely as well. So there'll be a few other things on there, and good job managing our PA equipment. We need to talk about an update to some of this stuff at some point, but that may be down the road if we actually use our front of the court building as well. So, but okay, thank you all. Have a great day. We are adjourned. Dang spongy moss. Spongy moss. I was looking at that. I think we can do it. Good estimate there. You just about nailed it. You know what? It's Bob's fault. If it wouldn't have been for the break, that would cost me 7 or 8 minutes there. That's hopefully not, but we can get